Hello, my name is Chrissy Hodges. I am an advocate for OCD, a certified peer support specialist, and I do consultations for referrals for getting treatment and resources for OCD. I'm also the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. Thanks for being here today, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about the trauma that OCD causes. Now, we don't often talk about the term trauma. And in my experience of working with people who live with OCD, they're a little averse to using that word in regards to their situation. And I'll tell you why. Trauma is a big word. And when we think about people who are traumatized, we typically think about people who are abused or have had extenuating circumstances in their life that has caused extreme suffering, often long-term suffering. And sometimes it feels weird to identify as someone who's been traumatized. For me, it was always hard because I just thought there's no way I've experienced trauma because I was relatively happy growing up, even though I was tormented by OCD. That makes no sense. But, I didn't see my upbringing as being traumatic. I didn't see things about my childhood and going into my adult life as trauma. And so I never felt like I was worthy of that label or deserving of it. And what I've found in working with people through peer support is that this is a really major common thread between all of us. However, what I've also found is that in hearing other people's stories and really taking some time in the last several years to evaluate my lived experience with OCD, and as OCD, I continue to move down the path of recovery, that I can 100% tell you with absolute certainty that what we experience with OCD is trauma. So in this video today, I don't want to talk about like OCD is trauma and your life is awful, the end. That's not what I'm trying to do. But what I do want to talk about is helping to normalize the experience that we have with OCD, because we tend to see this because this is how our brain works. We tend to see things as black and white. It is, wherever you are in your recovery with OCD, or if you're working toward that, or if you're just figuring out you have OCD, you may think to yourself, okay, here I have this situation right now. I need to get it fixed, and then everything's going to be great. That's super black and white thinking. And that's usually how OCD is presenting a problem to us. If only I didn't have this, then life would be great. And while that is wishful thinking, it's just inaccurate. And oftentimes what happens is that as you're working through obstacles in recovery to get to a place where you can manage OCD, you start to realize that thinking isn't true, and it can really result in a loss of hope. So I wanted to talk about this today to help normalize wherever you are. And if you sometimes experience heavy emotions, even after getting successful treatment, or if you have trouble accepting that this is an illness that you're going to have the rest of your life, and some of those things, and just help you to feel like if you are feeling that way, that you're not alone. So first, and I'm going to talk about specific examples of that here in a little bit, but first I wanted to talk about, for me, how I really came to identify my experience with OCD as traumatic. So typically when you think about someone who's experienced extreme trauma, our minds always goes, or most people's minds always go to someone who's experienced abuse, whether that be sexual, physical, emotional, mental. However, we still tend to go toward the physical or sexual abuse. It's like that is real trauma, right? And so if we think about someone who's abused, even as a child or even as an adult in an abusive relationship, one of the driving factors of your entire life is trying to stay safe. And so you're trapped in this feeling of fear all the time, and you don't feel safe with the people that you're around, or you don't feel safe because you have been abused at one point. And it's almost, I try to think about it as like if there's a little kid who's being abused and they are in constant state of fear. This can go on for years too. What's the one thing when we're a kid that we need to kind of squash that feeling of fear. It's safety. It's love. It's a comfortable environment where they know they're not going to get hurt. That's why when we're kids, and we would get hurt, we run to mom or dad or whoever our caretaker is, and they would hold us and say, "You're safe. It's going to be okay. We're going to be all right." Right? So, I kind of think of that scenario. But what if we put ourselves in that place? If our experience with OCD is like a kid who's experiencing fear all of the time, which for many of you, and myself included, I've had this since I was 8 years old. So pretty much and I imagine I had it before then. I just can't recall until like kind of the big themes hit for me. But if I can recall, I had no feeling of safety once OCD showed up. And I also, just like someone who might be abused or is getting abused, I also may feel a great deal of shame in telling other people. Why? What if they don't believe me? Or what if they side with the abuser? So, sorry, cat hair. In our case, that would be, what if I tell someone that I'm having sexual, violent, intrusive thoughts and they don't believe me? Or what if they side with OCD and they say things like, well, do you really think that you're that? Or do you really think you're capable of doing that? Those things are too scary a lot of times for us to even mention them. Like the thought of that happening to us will crush us. The same way someone who is abused is not going to risk telling in case someone doesn't believe them or in case the person believes the abuser. And so what happens then? We develop a tremendous amount of shame. We develop a tremendous amount of guilt. What did I do to deserve this? Why me? What kind of person would put myself in this scenario? What kind of person thinks these things? And so then we start having those heavy emotions that also kind of push down the possibility of asking for help. So in essence, if we're living just in fear all of the time from OCD, at a young age or even in adulthood, if it started in adulthood, it doesn't matter what age, fear is fear. And what we really crave is that sense of safety, and OCD steals that from us. It steals it from us by telling us all the bad things that will happen if we seek help. One of those is, well, what if you seek help and find out it's not really OCD and you're a horrible person, which sinks us even deeper into the fear. And so years and years, or months, if you've just found out that you have OCD, just this perpetual loss of hope and really starting to buy into shame and guilt and embarrassment about what we're dealing with, being kind of like that kid that just needs a safety net and there just isn't any. This is when we really can reflect and say, yeah, I was traumatized. OCD has traumatized me. And, I'm not the kind of person that's just like, yay, let's talk about trauma. And this is, everybody's traumatized. But there is a certain freedom when you think about why you feel the things that you feel in regards to yourself because of OCD. Typically, most of us have just wrecked self-esteems. We think we don't deserve happiness. We think that we're damaged goods. There's, all the, and we're usually really bright, creative, intelligent, social, amazing people. Yet the way we really look at ourselves and see of ourselves is just like, I always talk about it. It's like I'm walking on my self-esteem, And that's what happens when someone experiences prolonged, persistent trauma. So in saying that, I would like for, I'm hoping that can bring you a little bit of freedom of, if you're constantly asking questions about why this, or why do I think I don't deserve this, or why am I not worthy, or why do I feel this way about myself? Why do I think I'm a bad person? Yada, yada, yada. Well, it could very well be because this is how things develop when you've experienced trauma, and you may have never looked at your experience with OCD as traumatic. The reality is, even therapy is traumatic. You know, it's changing your behavior. It's tough doing exposures. And then kind of getting to a point where you're like, this is the way out. This is the way to get better. But it's very scary. It's scary to face some of the things that you've been fearing for years sometimes. And so that can be a source of trauma as well. And then afterwards, and this is kind of what I wanted to speak to example-wise. I've talked about this a little bit in other videos, but I just want to re-emphasize it. You know, when I get done with therapy, it was very much this, yes, I've gotten this under control and life is going to be great and the world's going to open up for me. And I failed to realize that I had spent the last 12 years of my life just surviving. I mean, literally every single day, you know, hoping, kind of like, again, being abused, like hoping OCD didn't show up. That's like hoping your abuser doesn't show up. And then when it did, feeling like it was my fault or I'm not good enough and I'm guilty and this and this and this. So it was just, you know, fight, flight, or freeze for 12 years. And then to all of a sudden be like, set free, go ahead. Yay, life. And it's like, I don't even know what life is. I don't know what to do with my time. I don't even know who I am. That was my biggest thing. So I was really pissed off. Like, are you serious? Like, my whole life up to this point has been a lie. I wasn't mad at anyone. I was just mad at my brain. I was mad at the fact that, why me? What'd I do to deserve this? You know, why didn't that person over there who's a total dick to everybody, like, why can't they have OCD? I don't mean that. Maybe for some people. No, I'm just kidding. But you know, all those questions that come up because as a result of unprocessed trauma, as a result of not understanding the magnitude of this type of illness that I had just survived, and then thinking to myself, I don't ever have to process that. Let me just go on with life. And then through the years, I was very much haunted by the why me's, and I'm the damaged goods, and horrible self-esteem issues, feeling very much I'm behind everybody in life, feeling very jealous and envious of other people, feeling like, you know, the times that I struggled, you know, how many milestones that were supposed to be good were ruined by OCD. Like, you know, on graduation day, like when everybody else is excited, I'm sitting here like, oh my God, am I really gay? Am I gay? Am I gay? Oh my God, I just looked at that girl. Did I get the groin on? Like, you know, who does that? Everybody else is excited and partying. And I'm like thinking I have to make this massive decision before I graduate whether I'm gay or not. Like, it's so ridiculous. But even though I'm making light of it now, people suffer for years with this. They're wondering if they're a pedophile on the day of their wedding. You know, that when they're having their child, they're worried about that, or they're worried they're going to have a kid and they're going to kill it or harm it. You know, and what if I snap and do this? Or they're, you know, you get your first job and you're worried that, oh my gosh, what if the first day I snap and go psychotic? You know, or whatever. And of course, I'm not saying anything negative about psychosis. That's just a common fear for individuals with OCD. But it's just, you know, or you get into your first relationship, your first love, and then all of a sudden, every single day you're questioning, do I really love this person? Oh my gosh, I don't like, you know, that mole that they have on their face. Does that mean I don't love them? And yada, yada, yada. What does this mean? You know, it's that in itself is traumatic. OCD ruins parts of our lives that we look forward to or we hope so much can be enjoyable. But then again, in that lies why OCD can be so potent for us. Because again, we have that black and white thinking. And I did a video earlier, you know, but I just want to emphasize, you know, I even knew leading up to my wedding recently, like, OCD is going to show up, it's going to be fine because I already know. And then when it did, I just failed to make that connection. I failed to make that, oh, that's right, you know, I know it's going to show up, let me do some ERP. Instead, it was just like, I can't believe it showed up. And that's where I went wrong. But that's also where I'm so human. That's where I'm human. I'm human with OCD. And I'm realistic with feeling sad and angry sometimes, and frustrated and envious of other people that don't have to deal with this. And just sometimes, like, it just isn't fucking fair. Like, that and then, like, kind of old stuff comes back of, like, what I do to deserve this, yada, yada, yada. Another part of me was just losing all the years. And then even now, when sometimes I've been ruminating about something for days and days, and I think I can't even be present for my husband. I can't, I'm going to go out with my friends this weekend, and I can't even be there and present to show up for them because my head is spinning about, whether or not I killed someone on the way in my car, or, whatever else it is that day, or whether or not, like, I have this bump on my leg and, I've been worried that it's been cancer. I've resisted Googling, but every single skin cancer story that I've read in the last 30 years of my life has been popping back up. Things I don't even remember that I've read. So yeah, it's just, I'm telling you all this because there really isn't a lot of emphasis placed on the emotional side of this, which is a result of the trauma we experience with OCD. And I want you to know, and the more people I talk about this to, the more I realize there's a need for it. And there's also just a lack of understanding and just a lack of empathy that we have for ourselves, and allowing ourselves to feel like and accept that what we deal with on a daily basis at times with OCD, or if it's just when it's really bad, and then sometimes you go for a while and it's not, but what we deal with is absolute worthy of saying we were traumatized. And I'm telling you that because I want it to be, I don't want you to feel alone. If you feel like your recovery or the steps you're taking to get toward recovery and to live and learn to manage this doesn't feel like it should. Like, again, black and white thinking. It feels like I should feel this way, or I should feel grateful that I'm like this, or life should be like that. Well, you know what? We live with OCD. It's unpredictable. Your life is going to be different than mine. Mine's going to be different from yours. Some people may never have symptoms again, ever. Some people may deal with it on a daily basis. I deal with it quite often. I'm good at recognizing it. I'm good at, it takes me a little while to believe it's OCD because it feels so real to me. But what I also am embracing recently is it's okay for me to just sometimes be like, fuck this illness. Like, this sucks. And I wish that I didn't have it many a times. And I work on acceptance, and that's helped probably the most, because in learning to manage OCD, it's pushing into the uncertainty, and it is accepting that those fears that we're having, just facing them and allowing them to be there, and not emotionally or logically responding to your brain behaviorally, like saying, I don't care if they're there, yada, yada. I have to do that with the prospect that I'm going to live with OCD the rest of my life too. And that is the kind of the coming to terms acceptance piece for me. I can wake up every day and hate my life and wish that it wasn't here, and, wish that I was somebody else. Or I can say, this is what I got. This is what I'll deal with, and I'm going to make the best of it, because here's the deal. Regardless of where you're at in recovery, regardless if today is a great day or if it's not a good day and you're feeling sad or you're feeling in your symptoms, you can still do life. And I think that's one of the things that I have come to terms with, and especially recently, is I can still do life even if it feels like chaos. And I can still slow down, and I can still breathe, and I can still take time to spend with friends even if I'm struggling, and I can be with my husband even if I'm struggling. And I can meet with clients and do peer work and build a business and whatever else I'm doing. And I'm probably going to struggle. But I also wanted you to know that I've done trauma therapy, and I am going to pursue it again. I did it for other stuff regarding childhood issues, but I am going to do it for OCD too. And I wanted to make sure and end on this. If you have and feel like you are still struggling with just not being able to grieve properly or come to terms with living with this illness and moving forward, once you get effective therapy, which is exposure response prevention, consider going to get some trauma therapy. Look for a trauma therapist in your area, or if you want to wait for a while, because a lot of times people just want to chill for a bit, kind of like, let's plateau and not keep working on stuff. I just want to like be all right for a little bit. But I want you to know that that's always an option, and that you don't have to stay stuck, and that learning to live and accept and having like complete acceptance, I guess they call it radical acceptance about what we're living with, it's a process. And it's certainly not going to happen overnight. And it certainly doesn't happen the day that you walk out of ERP therapy. And that you're not alone. And that I've had, lots of time that's gone by and I haven't even thought about it. And then OCD surfaces and it brings everything back up. And I go through the emotions again, but I look at it kind of like this. Every single time I go through it, I'm just a little bit a step higher. So then the next time we'll go one more step higher. And I just continue to try to stay ahead of it and just live the best life that I can with OCD. So I know that just touches on the surface of all we could talk about in regards for trauma, but, just to wrap up, there's always options. Definitely pursue exposure response prevention therapy for OCD, but there's always options after. If you just need some more support, peer support works great. I'm bringing a new peer on in January, so I'm going to have a lot more time and some more flexibility of getting people in. Peer support is an awesome thing for helping to process the big emotions of living with mental health symptoms. And then trauma therapy is available too. But the bottom line is you're not alone. And whatever you've experienced and the fear and the lack of feeling safe in OCD, not being able to just get that comfort or tell people or get what you needed, to feel like it's going to be okay, you are so not alone. So many of us felt that way and still do at times. So keep that in mind as you move through recovery. It isn't just black and white. It isn't this, you were sick and now you're well and life should be roses and unicorns. To quote Dr. Stephen Phillipson, life is still shitty. And it's not always, but I'm just saying that's sometimes the reality check for us. And it always brings me a laugh to think about it that way, but also it helps me realize that I'm not alone and I can continue to work through and just work on myself. And as I'm working through that, I can also get better in learning to manage OCD. So I hope that resonates. If you are interested in peer support or my referral consultations, please go to chrissyhodges.com. Also check out my my nonprofit website, ocdgamechangers.com. We have a big event coming up in March. And I hope that you're having a wonderful holiday season. I know it can be tough sometimes, but take care of yourself, self-care, set your boundaries with people. If you don't want to talk about mental health, don't. If you do. It's your life. Have a wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year, and I will see you in 2020.